Hi, my name's Alan Burnett from Corso. Welcome to our webinar today. How does a Vanguard Enterprise Architect manage innovation? This webinar should last about an hour, including questions, some housekeeping. You've all got an area where you can ask questions in the panel directly. Everyone's on mute for now, so just hear me speaking for a while. If you put some questions into that area, then when I finish the presentation, then I'll try and work through those and get to answer them. So feel free to ask away, but we won't actually deal with those until the end of the presentation. So I think some of you might have been to some of these webinars before. If so, then some of the introduction to Corso might already be known. But for those of you that are new, I shall give you a brief introduction to who we are. In terms of who I am, I look after the operations within Corso. That involves consulting, so I speak to clients on a regular basis about how they're implementing our tools and how they might be implementing our tools as well. If customers are interested parties, as well as doing presentations and these sort of webinars. So I've been with Corso since its inception 5 years ago. Before that, I was with IBM and Telelogic, and even Popkin before that, if people can go that far back into history and the tools that those companies supported. And now we're fully involved in building our own product base around agile enterprise architecture and innovation management, and that's really at the focus of what I want to talk about today in a broad level. So in terms of what we're going to try to do today, I'm actually going to examine how a new breed of architect, the Vanguard Enterprise Architect, which I'll describe in a bit more detail, is somebody that's tasked with balancing the future digital trends and disruptive technologies that are out there, whilst maintaining the core architecture and using an integrated innovation management and enterprise architecture approach to do that. That's what driving us as an organisation in terms of how we build our tools to support that approach. And a lot of this work, or a lot of this presentation, comes out of what Gartner are talking about and some of the shows that we attended over the last few months, looking at putting some of those ideas into practice and seeing certainly people starting to use those concepts and notions. How do we help do that? So in terms of Corso, just a step back. We're a company that's been going 5 years now. Most of us come from a lineage that I just described, so the system architect tool set, and supporting that over many years, and the pluses and minuses of doing that, I guess, has meant that we've got an idea of what sort of works and what doesn't work. And so we developed our own product and tools, all SaaS-based and around enterprise architecture, innovation management, around strategic planning, and hooking those dual pieces together. Now we have offices across the world, so we can support various channels. I'm based in the UK, but also have offices in the US and Australia and Canada. Got a professional services network, our own, also a whole group of individuals who've known over the years that can support specialist areas from a standard EA in creating EA practice all the way through to some of the defense architecture frameworks that are very specialist. And we have a strong partner and reseller network that we are building and built, and increasingly relying on partners in different parts of the world and different particular strengths in areas, especially around innovation, but also around EA and EA practice. So over the last few years, we've built a tool set and an infrastructure to support that. And some of you will come across that as you've gone through your, if you dealt with this through previously having tools from us or support consulting. So that's where we are, and I'm based in Birmingham, in the UK, which some of you may or may not know. Okay, so that's us. That's what I want to say on Corso really for now. What I really want to do is look at my presentation as a whole. So I'm going to describe what a Vanguard Enterprise Architect is. I'll also introduce this notion of Bi-Modal IT, which is also a Gartner phrase as well, from an emerging organisational trend, and look at how some of the pressures on our architect team has meant that you have to, there's benefit in looking at more than just building your enterprise architecture. You have to look back into the business to look at where innovation is coming from and how that affects how you build your next generation of IT or infrastructure, and which technologies that you use. So I'll talk about that and look at how our innovation management process bolted to the front end can help support this idea of understanding what's going on out in that business. And then I'll cycle back around again to see how that, just do a little example, just so through some of the through using elements of our tool for a few minutes to show how you can actually use that inside the tool inside our Agile EA platform and innovation management platform to achieve that. So it's going to be about 35-40 minutes of presentation and then some questions. So in terms of the Vanguard Enterprise Architect, this is a Gartner term. You'll hear this more and more increasingly. It's the term for the architect of tomorrow. So although perhaps today we're looking at maybe from research, 30% of global organizations are establishing a role that distinguishes what they call a foundation architect and a Vanguard Enterprise Architect. So the theme through the next 3 or 4 slides will be differentiating what those are. But the Vanguard or the architect that's looking to understand, adopt trends in new technology is we're going to focus our innovation piece on, but have to work together with a foundation architect. And the foundation architect is pretty much, as you see today, it's going to be focused on perhaps the core technologies, whereas a Vanguard architect is looking at these disruptive factors. A number of disruptive factors have been identified out there. So the Internet of Things. It's not just about timers on fridges. It's now part of the real world, and there's certain industries where it's very strong, manufacturing, automotive, but also it's increasingly becoming part of a number of different organisations, as well as mobile, not mobile, but mobile people. So how do you get to people out there? So every walk of life. I saw this morning somebody actually cleaning the windows on a shop front. They use a mobile to take a picture to show that they've cleaned that front window. It's everywhere. It's throughout where you wouldn't expect technology to be. So how do you manage mobile people and also emerging technologies? And there's analytics again around intelligence, understanding data as that permeates through our world, and then the new IT reality around cloud services, hosted services. We do hosting ourselves, but really that's what we're talking about here is how cloud is now all pervasive in getting into IT and IT solutions, and what can you put onto the cloud without disrupting with your core organization, with your core processes and functions. And then cybersecurity, something that we're increasingly being asked to understand and work with, where the threats from that they don't. There's no linear threat from cybersecurity. It's understanding what of your architecture could be exposed to threats, and how do you manage that risk. So these are all things that are affecting standard IT practice, and really the emergent Vanguard architect is somebody who starts to look at these disruptive factors, but also effectively manages the current estate as well. So it's these two kind of competing elements of looking after the core, and understanding what's going to come along the line, what's going to affect us, and what opportunities, technology opportunities, can we exploit, because they're the high value things from these new technologies, as well as things like cybersecurity, where we're forced to do certain things. It's also the Vanguard Enterprise Architect, or this individual or group, has to understand what's happening out in the team. There's a whole bunch of breakthrough opportunities. Many large organisations, a lot of the IT changes are not through research and development teams in IT anymore. They're actually from the business. So because now you can buy apps and cloud-based services that will provide a particular solution. It's taking the ability for the business teams to build their own IT infrastructure, and that could be at odds with what's happening in the architecture. Well, not at odds, it's just another factor that has to be involved. So you have to incorporate some sort of specialist team thinking into your architecture. And that specialist team is going on in and around the business. So that means that we have to harness that and understand that. And this is where the notion of innovation we talk about comes in later on, and looking at the innovation management process and trying to get further or back into the business. When we start to build new solutions, we have to incorporate what innovation is going on in the business into our architecture. We'll see how we do that. So, and it's not about R&D, just R&D for developing solutions and going through a linear process of saying, here's the requirements for a system, here how we build it, this is how we implement it, and this is the people it affects. The business is doing things on their own. And so we have to accompany both of these approaches, the core and the non-core. And this is where it leads into this idea of bimodal IT. And it's another good Gartner term, I agree, but it's around, again, distinguishing between these two factors. It's about how and when to incorporate these technologies. So we actually did a presentation on bimodal IT a few weeks back. So I won't try and cover too much of that same ground, but just as these terms are closely aligned. The bimodal IT is basically saying, okay, we've got two modes. We've got our core around IT core, and we focus our efforts on cost savings, efficiency, replenishment, managing the core. And then there's also the mode 2, which I'm talking about, which is disruptive factors, the innovation we need. And both modes must share the same goals and objectives. So somehow we have to balance these two aspects. And there's the mission critical legacy infrastructure, which we have to keep running, which has to keep improving and replenishing, as well as cost saving. And then there's the innovation piece. How do we bring on other services, virtual functions, as the business evolves and change? How do we incorporate new thinking into our IT? And how do we then implement that operationally? So there's this sort of linking into sort of DevOps and the operational aspects of that. So as a Vanguard Enterprise Architect, you must understand the mode 2, and that's what they're focusing on. Mode 1 is the foundation, and mode 2 is this exploiting these elements here. So if you can encompass that innovation, and understand what's being built out there and what's being developed out there, and which external factors are coming in, then there are new revenue opportunities for the business. And the enterprise architect can support that fully and be more relevant within the business. I guess that's kind of what we're all after, is making enterprise architecture relevant to any business. It can be a factor. If we can do that, then we can be responsive to those disruptive factors. So what we have to do, and organisations are trying to do, is support this traditional and cutting-edge mode of delivery at the same time. So bimodal IT is this two competing sections. The Vanguard Enterprise Architect is focusing on that mode 2 and working with their foundation architect peers, traditional enterprise architects, to manage that core and working together. And of course, for us, for us, it's the heart of it is tooling. We have to be able to focus on or allow both modes to work together. So you have the same goals, objectives, model underneath that, but you use different approaches to try and harness what's out there in the organisation. Have that shared view, and then be able to look at how you then develop the next level, the next iteration of architecture, and the roadmaps that go with that. So focusing again on mode 1 and mode 2. Mode 2 being the Vanguard Architect, again, exploiting the new. This is taken from Gartner's Technology Priorities 2015, and let's talk about spending priorities. What we can see is a clear distinction here as we walk through these of mode 1 type investment priorities around infrastructure, ERP, mobile networking, legacy modernization, and mode 2, which is the analytics, the cloud, digital marketing, security, all the elements we talked about before. So all these are the top investment criteria, investment spends. You can see that half of those are on mode 2. Okay, so that's why we're having this emergent architect that's looking at trying to incorporate these elements, a lot of them disruptive, into our core architecture. Also, in the same survey, estimated that 79, let's say 4/5 of IT spending is inside the budget, which means a fifth is outside, and that's the digital innovation piece. Okay, so that spend, although relatively small to the core, is still significant, and that's the spend that's being made out there in the business. That's where business teams are investing in technology that's mode 2 technology. Don't necessarily know it's mode 2 technology because that's a term coined here, but that's essentially what it's doing. It's looking at how do I find solutions to particular problems that perhaps IT aren't finding for me. So hence this emergence of an architect that's there to look at that and bring it into the core. Okay, so we're not talking about business critical and mission critical stuff. That's still the core. That's still pure enterprise architecture. We're talking about the element of surprise and managing that. So within those modes, there are different characteristics. So you can see mode 1 here. It's kind of the kind of traditional approach. We look for reliability of systems, look at price, performance. The approach to developing these tools is often waterfall or the kind of requirements-based model. We plan how we're going to move forward. We manage that in a structured way within governance. We source long-term suppliers with long-term contracts that we know, and we have a heft behind those clients, the suppliers that we have. And it's very IT centric, and the cycle times can be long. So that's this is what we need for our core system. But mode 2 looks at things from an emerging perspective. So we're looking at things like we need to be quickly to market, so we need to be agile. So we need the solution, we need it now, we need to do something. Okay. Approaches are more agile, Kanban, and again, one of our key things in the platform for us is ability to manage via Kanban, which I'll talk about. So governance is more around process-based, it's collaborative, not necessarily fitting into the full plan-driven. So vendors tend to be smaller, SaaS-based vendors. They exploit a particular technology or build a particular technology. They're all getting swallowed up at various points, but then other vendors emerge. So it's that world of particular solution. So there's a solution out there for a particular problem. Let's solve it with something that we can buy off the shelf. Again, that's going to be at odds with our core architecture if we want to understand both. Okay, and the cycle time and culture is very different. So the business culture is very close to the customer, and that's what that 20% spend is on outside of IT. It's on that kind of cultural. It's that kind of outcome-based, decision-based IT. So that's the focus of the situation that is emerging and why there's the thought process around what sort of architects are out there to exploit that. Okay. So to address this, there's traditional approaches that we've taken. Enterprise architecture is, I guess you could call it traditional. It's been around a while. It provides with accurate, reliable plans. We can understand the impact of change, all this sort of thing. We know we're going to get increased project success and reliability if we develop an architecture and understand the impact of change and how that affects our the patterns within our architecture, how they when they change or when they get impacted, how they affect the rest of the architecture. So we can in a linear way we can understand the impact of change. But it can also help us identify mode 1 and mode 2 assets. So why can't our enterprise architecture actually flag up some of the elements if we can get those into our model around mode 2 assets? Okay, and our enterprise architecture should allow us to improve communication. So if we have something modeled and mapped, and we have it tagged as mode 1, mode 2, whatever that might be, then we should improve our communication, be able to connect those pieces together. So the EA is beneficial at mode 1 and mode 2. So we're not advocating something different. The enterprise architecture is still our blueprint. It's just we're looking to extend that blueprint. What we're trying to do is use innovation processes, an innovation process, which I'll describe in a second, which highlight mode 1, but also identify mode 2 opportunities. So the innovation life cycle is different to the IT life cycle. So the innovation life cycle is about running a particular, let's call it a campaign, to make some particular change within the organization. And people are invited to add ideas to that campaign and put forward either technical solutions or practical solutions on how to do with that. So the life cycle is very different to an IT life cycle, where you need to plan, because you've got a huge core to deal with. So the innovation process can help us involve the business directly, collaborate with non-architect business stakeholders, and start to understand what is going on within within their organization, harness some of that going on there. Okay, and we can start to capture the candidate mode 2 technology. We can start to understand what technology is being proposed by certain parts of the business for certain solutions. So if there's a campaign for a particular change within your organization, there will be a number of technologies that are probably proposed for that. Okay, so we can take those and understand, if we can harness those, and we can start to say, how do we plug those into our IT? And these technologies tend to be, they're less dependent on critical systems, so IT has less to lose. They tend to be typically sort of cloud or SaaS-based services. Okay, so we can start to examine any potential gains from that. So we use an innovation process to help us do that, and I'll sort of describe that. So ultimately, as a Vanguard Enterprise Architect, we'll focus on our mode 2 and improve and connect our innovation management process with our foundation architecture to exploit these opportunities. And that's for us, that's a core of our thinking around why we've built tools for not only enterprise architecture but also innovation management. We saw that as being able to grab or harness what's going on in the business and then pull that into our architecture. So let's focus for a few minutes on an innovation management process. So right back at the front end here, and we've got a process. Process is like a funnel, basically. So you've got a lot of stuff at the start. These tend to be ideas or thoughts or things we want to do. And then at the right-hand side of that pipe, you've got perhaps what you can do. So an innovation management process or a managed innovation process is where you involve all sorts of stakeholders, all sorts of people into helping provide a solution. Because generally people know what the solution is. I mean, there's people out there in the field that are IT people that are just out there doing stuff, that have the wherefore to understand where things go wrong, and put ideas and maybe they know some technology they chuck in there as well. So that's the idea is to harness again people's thinking. So this fits into a broader process around we don't forget really in strategy. I mean there is 3 elements to this. There's the area of innovation. There still needs to be a strategy for an organization. Where does it want to go? What are its key challenges? How's it going to measure success? How's it going to evaluate different options? So that's still part of that. But then the innovation management core process is around, okay, let's have a campaign. So a campaign could be to make more use of mobile technologies, or it could be to improve an insurance company improving a claims handling process, or it could be just something around a particular single manual process. It doesn't matter what it is. It's a campaign that says, right, we're going to try and do something over a period of time. Let's get some ideas in here. Now, a lot of companies are using this. I mean, you can go online and look at, people like Starbucks have this exposed, but they actually expose these campaigns to everybody to see what's going on. Not everybody does that, of course, but that's just an example of that. So you launch a campaign about a particular theme, you capture metrics ideas, and you promote discussion around those ideas. And at the start, you're going to get a whole lot of stuff. So then you need to move through a process of saying, okay, which ideas are kind of the same sort of thing? Let's group them. Let's start to use our metrics and our scorecards that we built at the start to say, okay, what constitutes a good idea? What isn't such a good idea? So, I mean, the person that proposed it probably isn't the best person to evaluate that. There's a team that will evaluate ideas or groups of ideas, but they might go back out to the wider field to sort of use things like gamification to get ratings. Yeah, so you don't have to take those ratings as the right or wrong way to do things, but they're there to help you. Okay. And then there's further filtering you can do on those ideas as you start to work out which attributes or which criteria meet the best bang for the buck or the best ideas. And inside there could be some emerging and disruptive technologies. And this is the point of having this innovation process inside your architecture. These are the things that are going on out there that are being proposed as solutions, and the business is doing this. IT isn't doing this process. Okay, so there will be a business case proposed within one part of the organisation, and they may go ahead and do some proof of concepts and gather feedback from the pilot, and in the end, ultimately, may implement a particular solution around that. Okay, and that innovation management process will go on with or without IT. So the idea from an architect and a architecture management perspective is that if you're using tools to do that, and most people are now using some sort of tool to do this innovation management process. It's not just a wiki or a spreadsheet. It's now starting to go into tools, and there's a lot of tools out there. Some of them are focused very much on product-based innovation, but what we focus on is IT-based innovation, and trying to harness what's going on out there from an IT perspective that isn't actually part of IT. It's that discretionary 20% spend of IT that's going on in the business. Okay, so these things get implemented, and that's the process. From thousands of ideas comes a number of different implemented projects. Okay, so I mean the ideas or the concepts that we're working with here, one of those bubbles in that previous chart, we start to mark these, and they're very high levels of attributes, business impact, estimated value, which is not numeric, it's just high, medium, low. We can start then to link that down into the enterprise architecture. And I won't go too far into this graphic because it's probably a presentation in its own right. But just to show from a campaign and the ideas initiatives, how this fits into an enterprise architecture. As you would know it. Okay, so in terms of the architecture blueprint, the model, we can harness or bring in those ideas, initiatives, connect them into the existing architecture, work out if there's elements that we should add to that existing architecture, what they do, start to document those. Let's call them applications or whatever they might be. Probably more like solutions than applications. Okay. And if we have to develop those as part of our architecture, then they're going to work packages and programs and get delivered, some kind of delivery. Okay. The vision and goals and strategy is still part of the architecture, and they should still be driving the ideas and initiatives for the business. Okay, so that bit hasn't changed, and that's where you've got the common goals and business outcomes that I described earlier. EA and your innovation-based non-IT innovation are connected by those vision, strategy, and goals, or at least they should be. Okay, so this is how this campaign innovation management piece fits into a broader enterprise architecture. And we use tools because we're looking at trying to focus and harness those new emerging elements. Yeah, we do use elements like Kanban, and anybody that's seen any of our presentations before will see Kanban at the heart of this. Kanban, again, is just a process for managing either your innovation process or increasingly your enterprise architecture process. Because you, from this point, from this board, you can start to collaborate. So it's not just stickers on a wall that we've all seen. But here, once it's inside tooling, we can then start to engage directly. We can collaborate. We can ask people to directly collaborate with us on this model. And so we're starting to engage with perhaps those not in IT. We're starting to engage with people that have knowledge of which applications have been developed and what for, which solutions have been developed, and bringing those into the core. So it's all about, from Mode 2, Vanguard Enterprise Architecture perspective, being able to flag and understand those elements that are in the model. Okay. Campaigns. I did mention campaigns briefly before. I mean, this is just showing there could be specific campaigns around ideas to improve claims handling, which is a process-based piece, to enabling the Internet of Things in our company, which is more broader. Drive mobile, cloud, and social adoption. Again, these are very broad things. But then there's a very specific one, and that may involve some technology that we don't know about, because the business has found some technology to do certain things in certain places. So these campaigns have got a number of ideas behind them that link to particular requirements or features or solutions that then link into our architecture. And we can use gamification to go out as part of the process to do that. So it's all part of the innovation process that cuts across into the EA. So started off talking about the Vanguard Enterprise Architect and Mode 2 IT, trying to exploit some of these factors that are going on outside the business, but also exploiting stuff we know about already from an IT perspective. We also know that we can focus on delivering innovative solutions around cloud or analytics or cybersecurity or Internet of Things. We could do that as IT architects. It doesn't, not just the business. I'm saying we also harness the business as well. So all of these things now come together in a single place. So if we're looking at objectives and imperatives, okay, it's part of the model here. So the next 3 or 4 slides, I'm just going to go through some of the practical aspects of how we might build this as a model inside in this case our tool, but how we might build these models and using some traditional factors. Yeah. So we've got our Mode 2 assets. These are the things that we're trying to. This is the innovation that's going on now that we have pulled into our model. So we can link that back into a traditional business capability map. So if we're trying to share the same goals and imperatives, then that capability map is going to allow us to connect those to somehow categorize those into things that might help elements of the business. So it doesn't matter if it's Mode 1 or Mode 2, it's still going to be supporting some sort of capability within the business. Yeah, so we will build capability maps. We'll hook capability maps into the underlying applications and technology that deliver that particular capability. As well as using motivational model type things where we've got a whole bunch of ideas and goals in here that we've brought into model. How do we deliver a particular solution? How does it link back into the goals of the business? So we can start to build that model based on that trying to find out what Mode 2 assets we can distinguish. And then we can build a broader picture in terms of a particular campaign. How does a campaign, which might have originated from the business, would involve some Mode 1 and Mode 2 elements in here. How do we connect that? So we've got ideas through requirements into business process, application services, application components, technology, down to the technology stack. So again, we exploit, and I'm using some heat map elements here to exploit some of the Mode 2 and Mode 1 elements. Okay, so as we drill down into this, and we drill down further into this central section here, I've got a diagram that represents my Mode 1 element. So I can say, okay, all my Mode 1 elements are going to have high criticality. They're going to support business critical processes. So this is the core. Okay. So part of our architecture here, we can then say, as we've started to flag things through our work, through pulling in the functions and applications and solutions within our innovation management process, connected it into a coherent map based upon goals, objectives, and our business capabilities. As we drill down and try to find out how we're going to deliver that particular capability, and our core is going to exist at the same time. It's not going to disrupt our core. We're not going to have a divergent architecture, and we use models in here to do this. So, we're looking at key systems, which locations are impacted, data is affected, all the standard questions. But we can pull in some of the disruptive elements into here to ensure that they are not going to create a whole raft of alternative architecture, which sometime later on we'll have to go in, capture and bring it into the course. We're doing that as we go. So our Vanguard Architect, our Mode 2 and Mode 1 Foundation architects are working together on the same model here. Okay, so we've highlighted some core elements. We've taken, let's take one of our components and look at some of the attributes of Mode 2. So this is low or medium risk, high organizational value. So we can pick out those attributes, and from those attributes, then we can start to distinguish of our elements what is a Mode 2. So this application component here happens to be something that has been developed externally, maybe a cloud-based service, or ourselves, as we look at our architecture and we see here a particular view of a solution. Maybe there are elements here we can actually exploit some of the disruptive technologies ourselves, so we can look at trying to highlight some of the elements of our model that, again, are low risk and high organizational value because we've built that into our model. So we're using the same model here to exploit and understand elements. So as we look at the home and away financial application, which is just showing here on the Mode 1 and Mode 2, it's the same diagram, just highlighting some of the factors. Just make it a little bit more obvious. You can see what those factors are. So these are highlighted in the first diagram. This is the second through our mechanism for digging around inside the attributes and pulling out from those attributes, getting some analysis on the model. And then we can start to exploit that application. So what is it connected to? And then we can use traditional-ish techniques around impact analysis. So, okay, here's my potential Mode 2 application. If I am to develop that, or if that's going to be developed, what else is it connected? So we can see that the spaghetti that is the connection. We have to manage that. So in terms of exploiting some new opportunities, but also keeping the core, we can start to see where that impacts on our existing infrastructure and build and model that out. And in some cases, there won't be any connection, or there'll be a very small connection. Here is more mature view where we've started to integrate that into the core. So we're effectively going to hive this off into a cloud-based application. There's a financial application on the cloud. So maybe it's Sage Live or something. So how does that affect the connections around to the various other points of our architecture? It's going to affect production scheduling. So how do we interface between those two? We might decide we can't do it, or it shouldn't be done. But this is the analysis point that we have here that allows us to say, okay, what are we going to develop? So our Mode 1 and Mode 2. And then we're going to use roadmaps to understand how we can deliver that particular functionality or that technology. So we can exploit new trends, new technologies. We can bring them. We can start to expose them as potential investment opportunities, but also understand how they might affect the core. Okay, so this is going to help. So this has all come from the innovation management process. So the Vanguard architect that's using this innovation management process can start to understand what could be exploited as new technologies, and it's this is an evolving role. So there may be less opportunities now or more in the future, but the roadmap will then show us where we might be able to deliver some of these elements. And these roadmaps could be, we want to build roadmaps for different stakeholders. So there's a technology viewpoint, there's a viewpoint around ideas and delivering ideas and projects and programs. So there's a number of ways we might want to look at this. So at the start of the presentation, I set out to discuss how a Vanguard architect could utilize the innovation process. get help and insight into making better mode 2 investment decisions. Okay, so enterprise architect must have an insight into that technology. So we need to have one place and maintain the core, but also be able to harness what's out there. We also saw how the emerging Vanguard architect must have an insight into how disruptive technology trends, so they can mean convergence of the architecture. So we need to understand how to bring them into the core to make sure we don't have a divergent architecture. So an agile, collaborative, innovative approach, innovation-driven approach that's integrated with our architecture blueprints is what's required at that point. And as we're seeing a number of solutions now, 20% of spend outside of IT, people building particular solutions. We need, if we can be part of that process, or at least have tooling that allows us to capture the end point of that process, the innovation management process, then we can see what's going on there. And any moat opportunities can be revealed and incorporated into our architecture. So these elements together allow, we couple with an agile approach and Kanban driven and true collaboration, then the enterprise architect can manage or attain the twin goal of maintaining this core set of systems that the foundation architect is looking at, but also exploiting the emergent technologies without diverging. Okay, so our tools, the Corso tools, are built to focus on this very problem. We have our innovation management tooling that looks at the front end, and we can pull that information, or shares the same platform. So the tools we have that agility and collaboration around Kanbans. We've built that in mind so that the architects today can incorporate innovative thinking into developing their enterprise architecture. So there's a whole bunch of stuff on our website. There's a whole number of white papers and stuff you can look at if you wish at your leisure. Thanks for listening thus far. You can go on to our site. Obviously, this is all about our tool, so have a look at that link at the top. It will take you through the different elements that we have in the product, some short presentation on them. Look at the blog. So a lot of the stuff we're doing now is on our blog. Thinking our muses about what we see going on. We're on there.